Second Wind, the Snook refit with Anna van der Waal, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors. Canon. And by Sunbrella. Sunbrella marine fabrics have been the choice of boaters around the world for over 50 years, delivering reliable shelter from the elements and a beautiful aesthetic. Sunbrella marine fabrics last season after season, meeting boaters' needs above and below deck. And by North Sails. Quality equipment creates a quality cruising experience, which is why cruising sailors rely on North Sails. With each sail custom designed and engineered for your boat and sailing style, North Cruising Sails take you where you want to go. And by Edson, for those who want to see what is beyond the horizon and know that turning back home isn't an option. Over 160 years of innovation and dedication.
"29 teams from 15 nations make their last-minute preparations at Gosport Marina for the start of the greatest yacht race in the world, the third Whitbread Round the World Race. A 27,000-mile marathon starting and finishing at Portsmouth with stopovers at Cape Town, Auckland and Mar del Plata in Argentina. For the 5 maxes like Flyer, all competing for line honours, the voyage will last 7 months, and 8 or more for the smallest yachts.
I respect the ocean, the beauty, the vastness, the energy, and the calm. It's almost like another planet, a force like no other. I've logged thousands of miles at sea, many crossings of the Atlantic, the Indian, and the Pacific Oceans. And I just love being out there. It challenges you, mentally and physically. If you don't know what you're doing out there, it'll eat you alive.
The race was on.
My peak that I wanted to climb and achieve was the Whitbread Round the World Race, which is today called the Volvo Ocean Race. And I thought that's what I want to do. I love long hauls at sea of 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. What's the biggest, highest mountain in that arena is the Whitbread Round the World Race.
Sailing is problem solving. Racing sailboats, sailing a sailboat is just sort of an endless stream of problems that you need to solve.
You got to have a good sailing skill, so you can trim sails, you can drive, you can sail the boat, but you can also repair things. There's not enough room to just take an engineer. You've got to be a sailor as well. So really important to have 2 skills, to sail and to be able to fix stuff.
If he was playing football, you would call him a dual threat. You know, he'd play offense and defense. So he has this incredible heritage of sailing around the world on one of the most famous boats ever.
After rounding the final mark before the finish, everyone was excited. Connie van Rietschoten and his team had achieved all that they'd hoped for, and for the second time. In taking line honours, Flyer had been first into every port and had established a new world record for the voyage of 120 days, 12 hours.
We had a fantastic year of sailing behind us. It was marvelous to achieve the goals we had set. On the other hand, we were all rather sad because we knew that this is the end of a beautiful year.
I think the rare part of Anna is very few people know how great a boat racer, how many offshore miles he had before he decided to become really one of the premier boating photographers. Kind of create an industry in a way. One of the premier yachting photographers in history.
I bought myself a simple SLR camera, got a couple of rolls of film. And just for myself, when I had to go up the mast to do some maintenance work or to the end of the spinnaker pole, I'd take my camera with me. When I finished working, I'd click, click, click. I transitioned into the creative side of photography, but in a field that I knew well.
And I don't know that I could necessarily describe his style. He's good at the action shots, and part of what makes them able to get a shot is knowing how to anticipate it. And anticipating the shot really requires you having been there.
You're on the starting line and one boat shifts right, the other boat shifts left. You've kind of seen this movie before. He's a step ahead, and I think that's what makes a great photographer.
My camera has taken me to the far reaches of the globe, almost entirely by sailing and on sailboats. But it's always been on somebody else's boat. I wanted my own sailboat. I was ready to do a refit on an old sailboat and call it Snook. Let me take you back to the beginning. I come from a family of sailors in Holland. My grandfather sailed, my father and my mom sailed. We moved to South Africa. Even before I could walk, I was on boats and sailing. So here's a shot of my parents and myself on the ship in 1959 leaving Holland. A shot of the Dutch immigrant ship Grote Beer leaving Amsterdam. Yours truly at the wheel of the mighty Grote Berg. We lived and grew up in a small fishing village called Hout Bay, which is about 20 minutes outside of Cape Town, but a beautiful small little settlement in the mountains on the coast. We loved ships, sailing. My dad always had a small boat, and so that was my introduction to sailing from day one. You know, as a small young kid, stuffed in my life jacket, I was put on the boat and there we went. I loved going down to the harbor when I was in my early teens on a bicycle. The smell of the fishing factory, the fleet, the noise, poking around on the nets and just playing, and of course one thing led to another, and I asked for a ride one day, went fishing with these guys, and I was like, yes, this is great. I just loved being outside and feeling the boats, the movement of the boats and all that stuff, and really my passion for the ocean started right there and then. One of my dad's friends, Elton Moller, called one Saturday morning and said, hey, I need somebody to help me on this boat I've just launched, a 25-foot sailboat. Is your boy interested? And my dad shouted, hey, Anna, Elton wants you to go sailing with him. I said, no, not interested. Well, my dad kept talking on the phone to Elton for about half an hour, and in that time, it was mulling through my brain. I was thinking, what else am I gonna do? You know, I like sailing, I like the sea. I shouted, Pa, you still there? He says, yeah, tell him I'll come. Elton and Cynthia's Fifi was a cruising boat. Very comfortable, small, only 25 feet. Here's an early shot of Elton and Cynthia on their first boat, where we went obviously sailing and cruising before I got involved with racing. And this is their first little boat, Fifi, the 25-footer that he built. Here's a shot that sums up my passion for fishing and working on the fishing boats with the black guys, the Africans. And this is in Hout Bay, where we grew up, this fishing village. And I was working on these boats as a white kid, the only white guy on that boat. And it was very rare to get somebody like me working on those boats. So here was a very interesting time for me to grow up during apartheid.
The policy of apartheid, literally separateness, has been elevated by the government of South Africa from a mere theory of racial superiority to the law of the land. As the late Prime Minister, Dr. Hendrik Verwoerd, put it, we want to keep South Africa white. Keeping it white can mean only one thing, namely white domination. Not leadership, not guidance, but control, supremacy.
I straight away got a spot for a day trip with one of the fishing boats, and it was all coloreds and blacks, no white people. And to me, it was so cool because you really got to know these people, and you're sitting next to them fishing and working your fishing lines. And I'd come back from the end of the day just totally fired up and excited about what I'd done. And you know, my mates or friends would say, wow, you went on that fishing boat, you didn't get seasick? And how many other white people are there? And I said, none. They said, whoa, you crazy? I said, why? What? I mean, they're great people. It's not dangerous. They're just like you and me. High school was a disaster. You know, when it came to maths and science and English, I battled. And I battled to the point where the teacher would scream at me, "Van der Wal, you're useless. You're better off going and working on a farm. You know, what are you doing in class?" I was kept back several years in various grades, and it just wasn't good. And at times I just, say goodbye, I'm going to school, and take a left to go to the harbor instead of a right to the school bus. Well, eventually that caught up with me and things weren't great. A report from 1970, all about failing and most disappointing and a disaster and all that good stuff, so not very inspiring. But deep down I thought, yeah, you can carry on whatever you like. I know I'm not stupid, I'm not dumb, but this is just not my shtick, I'm not interested in science and math. There's other things that I love and have a passion for. My dad one day came across a really good apprentice school, a trade school, and this is not for high school kids, but it's more at the sort of the college age. So kids go either to college or they go to a trade school. And my dad, through his work, came across this trade school and said, "This is a good thing. You should really think about this. I would love you to do this. Get something behind you. You're good with your hands. I think this would really work."
If you like to work with your hands, if you like to make things, if you are not afraid of oil, grease, and dirt, if you like machinery, you can become a machinist.
So you learn to work on a lathe where you turn metal parts, and you also work on a milling machine where you cut certain parts, and you work on a bench to file and drill. And so you're making parts for machines. During my apprenticeship, I became more and more passionate about sailing, enjoyed sailing with Elton and Cynthia. But next door to us was the same boat, but a certain Dr. Mike Dupree, who was racing his boat. And one day he gave a little knock on the hull and he says, "Hey, I see you're running around and doing a lot of work with Elton and taking care of his boat, and do you want to come racing with us?" I was like, "Racing? I've never raced before." He says, "Well, come on over." An early picture of sailing with the doctor, with Mike Dupree, and one of his daughters. Look at the hair. And this is great. I learned a ton. I ended up working on the foredeck and steering, and at times racing the boat on my own. He was busy. There's times he couldn't sail. And he says, "Anna, will you sail the boat today?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And after sailing with Mike, I'd got an opportunity to do a transatlantic race on a 72-footer. And that race started in January. For me to be able to go on this boat, Kwaheri, on this transatlantic race, I'd been given a good spot on this boat. I was a watch captain, I was a starting helmsman. I just had to go. I couldn't say no because my apprenticeship. So passing the 3-year test was huge. I cut off 2 years of my study time, but more importantly, I could give the green flag to the owner of the boat and said, "I am coming with you. I'm your starting helmsman and I'm your watch captain." This is the start of the first transatlantic race from Cape Town to Uruguay. And here I am at the helm. I'm wearing the white cap in the middle of the boat, steering the boat at the start. We spent about 2 months in South America, and then the boat had to go back to Cape Town. But by this time it was fall in the Southern Ocean. Not a very nice time to be down there. And these are the conditions that we ran into. Very big storm, a lot of wind, 60, 70, 80 knots, huge seas, 30, 40, 50-foot seas. And just another idea of what the ocean can look like when it gets pretty riled up. So it was a survival condition. There was times when I thought, I wonder if we're going to get home. Big stuff, your first transatlantic. Don't see land at all for 20 days. Sailing at night, sailing during the day, it was beautiful. I just groveled in it. I just loved being out there. Life on the ocean was what I thought it could be. And the seed was planted at that point. My Everest, my peak that I wanted to climb and achieve was the Whitbread Round the World race, which is today called the Volvo Ocean Race. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I love long hauls at sea of 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. What's the biggest, highest mountain in that arena is the Whitbread Round the World race. Here's the man that I needed to convince to take me along. So here's a picture of Connie van Rietschoten, who won in 77 and then again did it in 81. And I was very keen to join his boat in 1981. And I looked at this guy and I said, here is the Sir Edmund Hillary of sailing. He's nailing it. He's winning this race. And I kept my ocean racing going in other parts of the world. And I thought, I'm going to build up my CV to a point where I can approach him and say, Connie, I'm your man. I want to race with you. I sent him a letter. And I said, I've done a lot of racing, I've done this and that, I want to be part of your program. And you know, he sent me a telex to meet at a yacht club in Marblehead, and we met there, and we had a great dinner, and he showed the drawings, because the boat was still on paper at that point, and we discussed the whole boat, a 76-foot custom-built sloop for this race. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like my dream, this is it. And at the end of the dinner, he walked me to my car and he stuck his hand out and he said, this is great. You've got these ocean-going skills and you can sail and you are good with people on long haul, but I'm looking for an electrician, I'm looking for a rigger, I'm looking for a doctor, I'm looking for a navigator and an engineer. And I said, engineer? I said, I just finished a 3-year apprenticeship where I can make things, I can fix things, I can machine things. He says, that's very interesting. Quite honestly, I think without that apprenticeship, I would have not got onto Flyer and Connie would not have given me the nod. I had to take care of the motor, I had to take care of the hydraulic systems. In the beginning, I helped with the rig and with the winches. And every single thing that had to be done and fitted and fixed, I understood because of my apprenticeship days. I had always dabbled in photography and I enjoyed that first transatlantic that I did to Uruguay. I remember looking through somebody's camera and thinking, wow, that's really cool how you can sort of, you know, set something up and shoot it and capture that scene, that moment. And that always stuck with me until I eventually bought myself a simple SLR camera. Got a couple of rolls of film. And just for myself, when I had to go up the mast to do some maintenance work or to the end of the spinnaker pole, I'd take my camera with me. When I finished working, I'd click, click, click. This is one of the very early pictures of Flyer that I got published. And this was coming across the Atlantic, heading to Marblehead on a trial, or a sail trial, crew trial. And I got onto the end of the boom and just loved the shot, looking into the cockpit to show the guys trimming sails and working the boat. So we eventually arrived in Marblehead, Mass, and that's where the sailmaker had his base, and we had our sails from this particular manufacturer. And we were on a mooring ball in Marblehead Harbor, and I heard this knock on the hull, and I looked over and there was 4 guys in suits. And they said, well, you know, we are the publishers and the editor of Sail Magazine, you know, one of the premier sailing magazines in the world. And I thought, wow, they said, we want to see your boat, it's famous, you know. I said, come on board. And I showed them the hull. I obviously knew the boat very well, inside out, and most of the crew were ashore. And so I took 45 minutes and showed every bit and piece. And at the end of the trip, I said, well, I've taken the time to show you our boat. Would you have a moment to look at what I've created with my camera, seeing that you guys are a magazine? And I took my slides, which were in a sleeve, and Keith Taylor, the editor, took them out and had a look and looked at me and says, interesting work. Can we take these with us? So they disappeared in their little rowing boat, and a couple of days later they got hold of me and said, we want you to shoot for us during the Round the World race on Flyer for Sail Magazine. What do you think? I said, well, I'm psyched, but I got to talk to the boss. And I said, Connie, Sail wants me to do this and this and that. And he says, right on, what else do you need? So he made sure I had another couple lenses and more film, and they gave me film. And that's really how I started shooting in a little bit more of a, shall we say, professional world. So this is a fairly important shot in that, again, in the Southern Ocean, up at the end of the spinnaker pole, had to do some maintenance work with some of the rigging, took my camera up, said to the guys, hold on, just give me a second here. A little was I to know that it became a cover of Sail Magazine, my first cover, and the first of many, I can happily say, and proudly say. Early days, you know, shooting, getting the feel of things. This was actually on the Round the World race, and just shows you, here I am, doing my thing. After we won the Round the World race on Flyer, I'd obviously been sailing and racing professionally for a while, and you get to a point where you want to have a nice warm bunk in your own house and, you know, a car and all that stuff, and even the most simplest things like, you know, a bank account and a place where the magazines could come to my address where I could read them. If you were on boats in those days, you had no fixed abode. You moved from one boat to the next, and I got a little tired of that, and I thought, you know, I'm ready to have a little shack ashore and a place where I can get some friends, and so that worked nicely. I was ready for that, and the photography came along at the same time, and together I just sort of worked at that. I get into photography full-time. I settle in Newport, in 1987, and I start my business. And here's a shot of yours truly at the computer. Early days in computers, but I still have slides on the light table, editing, getting things out, ready to send to the magazine. You know, the magazine assignments were great, and it got my name out there because you get your byline, photo by. But I was aiming at the advertising, and that's really where I could make a good living. And here's my first promo, my mailing card that I sent out to potential art buyers, art directors, magazine people. I transitioned into the creative side of photography, but in a field that I knew well. I just had to hone up or bone up on my photography skills, the technical. I felt I had an eye, but I just had to learn a little bit more about all these type of things. So it was a fun thing for me to get into the field of photography and work in a field that I really understood well. I had to focus my photography. From 1987, I thought, this is what I want to do, and I want to work hard at it. And I was driven. I was really looking in my life for something that I could do on my own. The sailing was great and all kinds of other opportunities, but I thought, I want to do something that is mine, that I can really sink my teeth into and work at and grow and be successful. And that's how it started in '87.
Anna's reputation preceded him. He was the guy who took the beautiful pictures of the pretty boats. Every regatta I was sailing in, you know, Anna was there. You could see the on assignment boat with Anna taking pictures.
You know, my wife Tenley came to me one day and said, you know, you've got a great commercial photography business going, but the public cannot see your work, they can't buy it, they occasionally see it in magazines, but why don't we do a gallery? And I'll run it and I'll get it all set up.
Anna was very apprehensive about partnering in something, but I always felt that the public should be able to buy Anna's work. I thought if we got to start a gallery, I could just sell to the client and hang the artwork, and that was it. He had a great reputation, and he was in a lot of magazines. His name was well known. If we hung a shingle out, I had no doubt that people would be coming up the stairs and into the gallery to see what we had to offer.
And today, 17 years later, that gallery is flourishing and doing very well, and we have lots of big, beautiful pieces on the wall, and it cranks right along. I've been very fortunate that with my camera, I've been able to travel to the far corners of the world, but it's always been on other people's boats. I wanted to get my own sailboat. And I said, we've got to get a boat. And here's an opportunity to get an old boat that most people would say, that's junk, dump it, go and buy a new boat. I thought, no, I'd just love to fix up an old classic boat. And I started looking for a boat and talking to a mate of mine, Ezra Smith, about, what do you think? I want to find an old cruising boat that I can fix up. And Ezra said to me, a Pearson 36, go and find them. They were built in 1972. They built about 100 of them, and go and poke around. And I looked at 4 of them, and the first one was in Newport. Structurally, I found out in very good shape, but cosmetically it was very tired. So it needed, you know, fixing up, and that's eventually the boat that I bought. So here's a picture of Snook, one of the first times I saw her on the mooring, and I just loved her lines. You can see she has sweet lines. You'd never say this is a 1972 boat. It looks more like a 1985 boat. She was very much ahead of her time in the way Bill Shaw designed her. So I went down below, I asked the owner, do you mind if I just take a couple of snaps just for my own record? And as you can see, the cabin sole or the floor is pretty badly. Everywhere you walked, you got white paint, flakes of white paint on your shoes. And, you know, while I was down below, one of the leaves of the table just fell right off, you know, and all the cushions just really smelt. And it was just the boat was tired. I lifted up the floorboard, looked down there, and it was just a black liquid sloshing around in the bilge.
So Anna swung me by this boat. It was on a mooring in Newport, and he wanted me to take a look at it. He had gone for a sail, and he liked it. And as we went by, I saw that it was very tired. So I went down below, and it had this very distinct odor, which I was a bit concerned about.
And we went for a test sail on what was to become Snook. And, you know, we were sailing in Newport, under the bridge, and I was steering the boat. And I just had this feeling. The feeling was, this is it. It's great, it's perfect. Look, it's tired, it smells, it stinks. My wife's gonna hate it, but I know I can fix it up. By the time we got off the boat, we'd had a deal, we had a handshake, and I knew this was it. This was the mission, you know, to rebuild and redo this boat. So she's a 36-foot boat built in 1972. You get the idea here, 36 feet long, accommodation. You can sleep, you can cook, you can shower, you can do everything on board. You get another idea here of the dimensions and the size of the boat. She's a comfortable cruising boat. Pearson built a bunch of quality boats in the 70s all the way into the 90s. And I bought a very early one from 1972, and she was built for cruising and for racing.
Pearson Cousins definitely popularized the recreational sailboat. They were very traditional, very classic in their lines, nothing too radical, just good-looking boats with great proportions. These guys, the Pearson Cousins, Pearson Yachts, they figured out how to build things solid. These were boats that stand the test of time.
Pearson was kind of created, in a sense, mass production before there was such a thing. These were still hand-laid, called chopper guns. They would shoot the inside of molds with guns that would just spray fiberglass and resin, and that would be the, you know, thick, like 3/4 inch thick hulls and these big, heavy boats.
Here's the core. So this is of the deck. And you can see there's 3/4 inches of plywood and then 1/4 inch of fiberglass on either side. So you're looking at a total of 1.25 inch thickness of deck, bulletproof. Never find that in new boats.
That's why they're all still around. That's why Anna has a boat right now, is because they were so literally bulletproof when they were built. They're not going anywhere for a long, long time. So that structure and the creation of that structure was born right here in Rhode Island.
Bristol specifically is a mecca for boat building. Anything from little wooden boats near the Harrisoff Museum to America's Cup boats that are being built down the road around the corner from us here.
Well, Bristol really is the cradle of civilization from the boat building design and boat building perspective in the U.S. Where we sit today in Bristol, Rhode Island, is the original site of the Harrisoff Manufacturing Company.
This is not unlike an old house renovation, where the old house was so overbuilt that the structure and the bones of it are going to be around forever. You can't build a boat like that anymore because it's not cost effective. Old boats just never die.
This was not a complete disaster, this boat. Structurally, she was in very good shape. I could say it was just a cosmetic refit. Here we hold the boat out at Clark's in Jamestown. Clark's Boatyard was the place where we started everything. Adrian, my youngest boy, and I went through the whole boat and decided to just get rid of the garbage.
He bought Snook and decided to take the entire winter off to fix the boat, which I understood. If we're going to afford this boat, that he needed to do it, and he had to talk to his vendors to get some great deals to get it going.
I had some money to work with, but very little. And me doing the refit on Snook required that I would do all the trades. I would do the plumbing, the electrical, the painting, the woodwork, the rigging, the deck hardware. The boat came home, and this is in my driveway at home. You can see in the fall here in October, we were about to get started on a big project. I decided to put a full frame on the boat and cover it up so that I could work throughout the winter and heat the boat a bit and light it, that I could see what I was doing. From sort of September until July, I really put my photography on the back burner. I said to my wife, just give me this winter to do this project and really get my hands back into something that I love doing, and from my early apprentice days where I could fix things, make things. This is how I did all the time lapse. I made a little rig with a plate and a grip, you know, so that I could move the camera anywhere, just hit the button and the time lapse started. I knew what this boat needed. I knew how to do it. I knew where to find it. I knew how to put it together. Sometimes I need a little help here and there to get things done, but I had the big picture all along, and that's what kept me going. Okay, so now we get into all the different sections. I decided to replace all the hatches because they were all crazed and were leaking terribly. So every time it rained, there was a puddle of water down below. And on a boat, that's not a good thing. I saved almost all the old teak, sanded it down, epoxied it, varnished it. So you can see this is what I started out with. And this was in the galley, and this is an area I wanted to definitely replace. It just needed to be refinished. And I decided to sand everything down, put a coat of epoxy on it just to close up the pores, and then I sanded that down and put a coat of varnish on it. And that's how I treated all the varnishing down below. And you can see here that it's all looking like new again, but this is very old teak. So here's the new galley locker that I completely rebuilt, but the original dark teak frame was just refinished.
To do a project like what Anna's doing on this boat is a fine line between sheer brilliance and pure insanity. To gut it and to kind of start from scratch is really the only way to do it.
So this is the head, or if you like to call it, the bathroom. Very rudimentary, a little hand water pump, and everything else was really tired, rusty, leaking. You can see the old sink on the left and the new sink on the right. And here it is finished with a new faucet with hot and cold running water. The main sink in the galley, you can see it was pitted, but here we are, the new sink arrived. I figured this would fit. You can see I've marked it out, and I'm going to start cutting to drop this sink into the galley. Here's the completed piece. Sink is in, all sealed up and locked down, and a nice hot and cold running spigot with pressurized water. One of the things I said to Tenley is, what's important to you on the boat? And she said, I want to have hot and cold running water. And then I had to put all new piping in the boat, obviously hot and cold. So I used PEX piping and PEX fittings. Doing the refit on Snook was a full-time job for me. Not only did I do all the trades, but somebody had to run the project. You had to be on the phone to the vendors of the various, be it the rigging, be it the paint, be it, whatever. I would periodically go and visit with some of my vendors and to get information on their products. It's a huge help for me to do these things because I sort of know what I need to do, but I need to get the finer details tweaked with an expert. And in one case, an old friend stopped by to see me in my shop.
I thought I might catch you in here.
Yeah, good timing.
Not exactly boating weather out there.
Yeah, it's cold day. That's why I'm doing this inside, and I don't want to be anywhere near the boat.
So today's plumbing day?
It's plumbing day, and I'll just give you the little briefing here. I've done my research. This is what I've got, and it sounds like it's pretty cool.
It's a great little unit. I've seen these before. This is about 6 gallons, and that's really all you need. Anytime that engine's running, if you could see this is a heat exchanger. Yeah. Copper goes in with fins on it and comes back out here, so antifreeze goes through this way with a little pump. And it's a glass-lined steel tank, so it's about 6 gallons, I think. Yeah. So anytime you have a glass-lined steel tank, you're going to have some sort of anode rod. So think about where this goes, where you could replace this every 2 or 3 years. You could get it to last a little longer. You got all your piping?
I do.
Okay.
And what I'll do is I'll go on the boat with my coil of PEX, and then make the runs and then cut them on the boat. So
this is, to me, the wonder plastic. It just doesn't get brittle over time. Yeah. It's terrific. You can put it in and feel great about it. And connections-wise, there's a bunch of different connections. But what are you going to use, this Dutch finger kind of?
That's it. Just pop them on.
That's too easy.
Yeah, that's easy.
You're making it too easy.
I'll take easy, believe me.
All right, so your shower up in the cockpit somewhere?
Cockpit, absolutely. Every time you swim, you got to be able to have a little.
So just pull it out and put it back away. So that'll just be perfect. All right, so why don't we get something done today?
Yeah, sure.
I can fit.
Yeah, yeah, right. You know how tight it is down below there?
It's pretty tight.
Oh, man. People think it's tight in a house. A boat's 10 times worse.
Let's get something done today.
Okay, got it. All right.
All right, grab that.
You want to have a look? Now, listen, you carry this and I'll carry that valve.
Get your jacket, though.
Okay. This is what the nav station, or the area on the boat where you do your navigating, looked like. And then I just started to make a whole new panel. And the panel was then to house all the new instruments. And here were all the new instruments that I'd ordered, and then had to figure out how to lay them out in this wooden panel. Now I want to just drill the holes for the screws. This is the new nav station, the way that I did it and rebuilt everything. I decided to go with a very simple refrigeration system. You plug this in to a cigarette lighter and it draws 1 to 2 amps. Absolutely perfect. And I wanted to go with solar panels so that the solar panels could charge the batteries that could run the refrigerator day and night. Working on getting my lighting organized and on my way to New Bedford here in Massachusetts, and gonna go and talk to Kinder, and his company specializes in marine lighting. And what I want to figure out is if I can get rid of all my incandescent lights and go with LED, and if they have suitable fixtures, and how that's all going to work.
These are obviously reading lights. You have your traditional bulkhead style that pivots this way and that way.
Right.
And then a new trend we're seeing is gooseneck style like this.
Yep.
Either one of these are becoming loaded with features now, so you can get built-in dimming, you can get USB ports.
I replaced all the lighting, all the wiring, because it was all old incandescent lights. They got hot, they didn't burn properly, used a lot of power. I went to LED. And then this is what it looked like after I was finished with this particular fitting for the LED. I also decided to put a windlass on the boat, and so that is a piece of gear that you put on the front of the boat to pull up the anchor. So what this will go up in here, up against the bottom unit or the chain and so on, where the chain comes on deck. So I'll bolt it up later on. And what I ended up doing was running these big heavy gauge cables all the way back to the battery. 2 gauge, 2.0 gauge wires, and this is the controller for the foot switches. So these are the foot switches that'll go up. You can see the holes up in the deck, and they'll control the winch. So we had to pull the motor out of the space here to get the new mounts on. And when I had the whole motor out, I decided to paint the bilge and also put this new sound insulation in the whole space. I've even put some underneath the sink. But it's been a great time to replace the battery boxes, check the wiring, like I said, paint the bilge. We'll slide the whole engine back in and close it up. And at that point I was able to clean and service. This is a filter where the raw water comes in from the ocean to cool the engine. And these are filters that I replaced. On the left is the old filter, diesel filter, and on the right is a new, nice, clean, compact filter. Engine back in. So here we are, the new mounting pads on the engine have been installed. We got all the other new wiring, connections, belts, everything was replaced.
After the amount of time that Anna is going to have spent dirty and tired and beat up and questioning every reason why he's doing this, I can't even fathom the dark moments, and there will be plenty of dark moments.
What the bloody hell was that? What were the working conditions like? Well, in February, when it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the temperature was about sort of 26 degrees outside, and I was lucky if I got the boat to 40 degrees down below with a little space heater and wearing hiking boots. There was times when the working conditions were lousy. I'd look down the hull of the boat, or I'd look inside the boat, and I could see 7 things that I just had to tackle, and it just became a little much, you know. And there was times when I thought, oh my goodness, how am I going to manage? This is going to kill me.
And then the boat was under a tent, and there wasn't a lot of progress happening. I couldn't see it from the outside, so I would climb on up and look inside and kind of shake my head and go back down and finish dinner and yell when it was finished.
I got to a point in February or early March when it was dark and cold that I thought, if I stop now, I will not get going again. I will lose the momentum, and that'll be the end of the project.
It's the winter. The gallery is dead. There are no customers walking in. He's normally going down south shooting for assignment work, regattas in the Caribbean, and none of that was happening. I was getting a little nervous. The bank account was draining. He was very good about sticking to his budget, but he wasn't making any money. So that was the point of contention.
And at that time I had to dig deep and just turn my radio, which had a great talk show on it, a little louder. And those guys kept me going because you couldn't dwell on this cold and the miserableness.
Every night at dinner I'd hear another story about what he fixed, some mechanic, some this, some that. And it was over my head. I feigned interest a little bit, I think, but I was a little tired of the discussion at dinner time every night, frankly.
Here's the boat. Again, looking at those shots of the original boat. This is what we call the hull or the top sides. Very tired, very chalky, and it really needed to be painted. And this is where the work began. And here they are actually starting to spray paint the base coat. And then we had the first coat of blue on the hull, and I thought, yes, this is going to look nice. And this was the day that the trailer came to pick her up, and I was like so excited. Picking up the boat from the shop, the paint shop, put it on the trailer, and I just took a couple of pictures of the boat on the road, which was a magical trip.
So it came back from the paint shop and it looked amazing. I could not believe what I saw. It was a boat. And now it was down to my turn to make some decisions, some finished decisions. We selected some fun cushions and some great lighting inside the boat and some neutral carpeting for the home. That was about it.
Tenley got involved here in picking the right colors, and we had new cushions. Everything smelled better, everything was nice and clean. Here we were working with the Custom Marine Canvas Group down in Nowang, Connecticut, and one of the seamstresses finishing off one of the cushions. Here the team, a canvas maker from Wickford, was making a pattern for the Dodger to make a nice new Dodger. One of the ladies at the canvas shop here putting the panels actually onto the canvas, and here we are all done. The mast was in good shape, but the very base of the mast needed quite a bit of work. So if you look, this was the base of the mast, corroded beyond repair in this particular section. So I ended up cutting a few inches off the base of the mast and then had to make a plug that the mast could sit on to replace the 2 inches that I took off. So here we are. I made a base out of G10 material. Here it's in position. You can see what I did. Now it's sitting on that 2-inch foot, and with the insert that the mast would move around. So this is where the mast comes through the deck and goes down into the boat. With some work, I was able to sand that down and glassed it and closed it up, and it's all nicely finished off now. So here's I put a new track on the back of the mast, and you can see this is all now, with the new track all ready to go. And here's all the pile of the old rigging, all the old ropes and halyards that I took off and either gave to the consignment shop or put in the dumpster. I'm doing a lot of the projects myself on this boat, but there are certain things that I cannot do, and I need expertise help. And Phip, with his rigging shop, is so good at helping me and explaining how to do it. When it comes to doing the actual wires and the swaging, this is really specialized stuff. I love these shops. It smells of the oil. I can see the machines. It's the trades that I spend time in as a youngster. And it's a crucial part of my project. I also had to replace the lights. There's a bunch of lights on a mast for navigation at night that ships can see you. So time for new LED. These lights you could see miles away. Lighting on the spreaders had to be replaced. So these are the old lights. This is how I redid the wiring. I ran all new wires inside the mast, which is quite a project because you physically can't get in there. One of the problems was that you had all these wires in the mast that were just hanging there. So when you're at anchor and the boat was swaying like this, everything was clanging in there. So I went to the computer and I did a search about noisy halyards or noisy wires. So when you have the whole bundle of new wires outside of the mast, every 3 feet, put 3 or 4 zip ties and then leave the ties sticking out. So when it goes back up the mast and you're at anchor, all these little tails prevent it from clanging around. Dead quiet. Problem solved. This is the main steering compass as it was originally on the boat when I bought the boat. There was no liquid in the compass, so the card didn't even swing. It was cracked, and here you get an idea of what it looked like. On the left was the old, and then the same compass, but obviously a newer model. So I've just arrived at the facility that manufactures the steering systems for the boat. And I want to change it a bit because, as you can see here, Tenley is quite far forward. I want to move the steering wheel and the pedestal aft to where I'm standing so that there's more room to get in and out of the boat, access the winches, just a better setup. So here we have what we call the pedestal, and that is where the steering wheel is connected to. And this company builds these, the old ones and new ones. And I want to move it from there, the old spot, way aft, further back. And so I'm going to go and have a look inside and see what I can figure out.
So we have a few main components that make up the main body of it. This is the upper casting that's cast and then machined right here in-house.
Beautifully done, yeah.
And then we also have our extrusion, and then a cast base. The bolt pattern is exactly the same, so it's the exact same footprint.
Yeah.
However, when that pedestal was invented, the compass was the main navigational piece of equipment at the helm, and that was essentially it. Now we have a few more amenities we want to put at our fingertips, like a chart plotter.
Right.
So now we can still keep the compass.
Yeah.
You get a chart plotter.
Yeah.
Now you also get a single lever engine control.
Yeah, not the two levers, and that's so much better.
I'm going to drill this a little bit smaller, 32nd to 16,
Undersized.
under the 2-inch that I'm going to put through there.
And that's the final size.
Right, and that one, and then I come in with a reamer and I do 2-inch.
Oh, okay.
And then that's your final. It's all cleaned up really nice.
Yeah.
They're all made out of mag bronze. That doesn't rot, it's good for the environment, and it's good for your boat.
Wow, that's awesome. I've come in a full circle. You know, 40 years ago I was in a machine shop, learning the trade of making parts, and here I am, like I said, 40 years later, back in a machine shop, but this time with a whole marine environment, and talking to the same people, looking at the same machines, but it's all for my boat and my refit on Snook. Here was the new pedestal in my workshop where I installed the navigation equipment, the compass, I put the wheel in and wired everything. And here it is in position. So much further aft, a much cleaner new look. The apprenticeship gave me a set of skills that I didn't have before, in that I really perfected how to work with my hands. I sort of had it in me, but the skill was honed and polished during my apprenticeship. And I came out of there confident to pick up a saw, a hacksaw, a drill, or whatever. And also, I felt I could look at a problem, a mechanical problem, be it a steering system or a mast or a rig that needed to be fixed or tweaked or drilled or tapped. I knew how to tackle it.
One thing I think none of us really understood about Anna is how much he understands systems and his engineering background. These kind of high school programs that they grew up with in South Africa.
I think it's important to see people like Anna putting time and effort into boats, and we're in a community here where boating is a big part of the industry, and it's a big employer around here.
The marine trades, especially here in Rhode Island, is really hungry for new workers.
Parts of this town where there are clusters of companies that build boats, that build parts, that build molds, masts, sails, anything you could think of that has anything to do with the marine industry, electronics. I mean, Newport is kind of where, you know, people play with their boats, but Bristol tends to be where they make them.
They need people with the kinds of skills that we teach here at IRIS. So the marine trades are somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,700 companies and 13,000 workers. It makes up about a fifth of the Rhode Island economy. When I go out and talk to people who are in the industry, the biggest issue for them is having skilled workers.
In the process of teaching kids how to build boats, we're also inspiring them in the Harrisoff Museum with stories about innovation and engineering. Which is also problem solving. We're inspiring them with stories about design and entrepreneurship, which is also problem solving. They build boats here. They learn how to use tools. They learn the rudiments of boat building skills. In the process, they also learn how to be employees. They learn life skills. They learn things like showing up on time. They learn things like filling out a timesheet. They learn things like working as a team, working as part of a process. And the ability to actually be, part of a functioning company.
I feel that some of the skills that I acquired and learned in my apprenticeship, I never expected would help me so much in my life, because you're learning to work with your hands, and that's such a valuable skill to learn. There's too few people doing that, and the world needs people to fix stuff, make things, and it was a great confidence booster for me.
I can't fathom doing a project like, first of all, the patience and the understanding of all the systems. By the way, when it's all said and done, he's going to have an experience on the boat like no other, because when the inevitable little problem happens on this boat, he knows exactly how to fix it.
Hey Ken.
Anna?
How's it going?
Good, thanks.
It was nice to get a preliminary panel layout for the main. And I just had some questions about, the battens, for instance. Are we going to go with 4 full battens or 2 full, or what do you think is the best idea here?
First of all, we can make massive improvements here. Not just how the boat sails, but the balance of the boat, how little we can make it heel over because of the shape of the sail, all kinds of comfort and speed and performance.
Right.
By going with this higher performance material, we can actually drop down a couple levels in weight. Again, less heeling moment, less stretch. All the attributes you really hope to get out of a good set of sails.
Yeah, that sounds great. So here we are in the garden. The box had arrived from the sailmaker. Adrian and I decided to unroll the sails and have a look and stick the numbers on and all that kind of good stuff. An exciting time. Here we are putting the new sails on the boom. We had never flown a spinnaker on the boat before because all the old sails were so tired, whereas this was a brand new Starcut spinnaker. All the mast work had been completed, so I did all the mast work here at Clark's on the sawhorses, and now we're talking June, so it's nice out. It's not so cold anymore.
After all the work was done, one of the last things to happen to it was to step the mast. And we use our crane to basically hoist the mast up and put it into place. My name is Jim Clark. I'm one of the owners of Clark Boatyard. It's a family business. We're a full-service boatyard, meaning that we haul boats, we store them for the winter, we maintain them, we repair them. May 1st, our mooring season starts. We start launching boats for the season. We take our hydraulic trailer, we move it around with a front end loader. So then we lift the boat up where it's been sitting for the year, and then we drive it over to our marine railway. And then we launch the boat.
This is my own project. It was a boat that needed some love and care, and I got stuck into it. I fixed it up, and now I have a beautiful boat.
If you'd asked him, when he was working away in the machine shop in South Africa, okay, this is where you're gonna end up, he would have laughed at you.
Anna is one of those people that he's kind of a Renaissance man in a lot of ways.
It's really nice to see him get to take all that effort that he would normally put into a photo shoot and put it into his own boat.
I've known Anna most of my professional sailing career as the guy in the helicopter or the crazy guy in the water shooting up out of the water when you're going around a mark or just having a camera in his hand. So I just kind of like the fact that he's getting back on the water again, going sailing. This is why we all do this.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey.
She looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Did you get your hot water?
I did.
Yes.
Nice to use it.
Have a great one.
Thank you.
I'll be looking for you out there.
See ya. Vanderwall, you're useless. You're better off going and working on a farm. What are you doing in class? This is just not my shtick. There's other things that I love and have a passion for.
When the sails go up and they fit and they're smooth and the boat leans over a little bit and starts shooting forward, and Tinley has a big smile on her face, it's going to be all worth it.
Beautiful.
He gets so close, it's great.
I learned that Anna is very tenacious, and he gets a bee in his bonnet and he will get the job done. It's been a great kind of a second opportunity for us. Like I said, we never had time alone. We were married with 2 kids, had a third, and now this is our honeymoon. This is our second win.
You know, the project physically took a lot out of me. And mentally, not something that you can't replace, right? But it puts you to the test. It really does, you know, and I've said this to you several times. In February, when it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's dark, and it's sort of 36 degrees below, and you look at the project you just done, and it's finished, but you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other projects that need to be done. You're just like, keep going, don't stop, you know. And the other rewarding thing is that when we are somewhere at anchor or we're sailing along and Tenley's relaxed and reading a book, and she says to me, "You did an amazing job. Thank you." I get choked up. It's turned out perfectly, and it's just a rewarding thing to work with your hands and to make something that's yours.
Second Wind, the Snook refit with Anna van der Wal, is brought to you in part by the following sponsors. Canon. And by Sunbrella. Sunbrella marine fabrics have been the choice of boaters around the world for over 50 years, delivering reliable shelter from the elements and a beautiful aesthetic. Sunbrella marine fabrics last season after season, meeting boaters' needs above and below deck. And by North Sails. Quality equipment creates a quality cruising experience, which is why cruising sailors rely on North Sails. With each sail custom designed and engineered for your boat and sailing style, North Cruising Sails take you where you want to go. And by Edson, for those who want to see what is beyond the horizon and know that turning back home isn't an option. Over 160 years of innovation and dedication.